My name is Jennifer Gehret. I'm with Springford Counseling Services. We are just a nonprofit. We are located in Royersford, Pennsylvania, but we do service Montgomery County, Chester County, Berks County as well. Springford Counseling has been in the business of a drug and alcohol licensed facility for about 22 years. And about 8 years ago, we got a call from a school that there was a suicide of a 7th grader and asked for some support, not only to go into the school and provide support for that, but also to provide to parents. So when we got the call, we were like, sure, we can do this. We're counselors, but to be honest with you, suicide wasn't a topic. Like drug and alcohol, yeah, I can do that. That's great. But then we decided to do that. We went into the school, and then for the past 8 years, since I love it, I love suicide prevention now, that we go into schools and we talk into communities and talk about suicide prevention. Just want to start off by just saying, you've known me for 3 seconds, right? But let's say I stand up and I fall to the floor and I'm unresponsive. What are you going to do for me? CPR, what else?
Call the police.
Call the police, what else?
Check on you.
Check on you, call an ambulance, absolutely.
Right.
And that response is immediate, right? You don't even know me, and you're going to help me. What I want to do today is to challenge you to feel the same way about mental health and suicide prevention. We have individuals walking around with what I call emotional pain, inner pain, and our response isn't like that. It's no one's fault, but that is what we have to change. We have to change helping a stranger we wouldn't even know, yet we have a brother or a child that is struggling, and our response isn't as immediate. And if your parents, if you have a sore throat, you go right to the doctor, right? You don't think twice. Yeah, maybe wait a day or two because co-pays are high, but you have that. That's what I want you to walk away with today. I want you to walk away with the fact that we need to reframe how we think about mental health. Okay. Another question I often get is suicide. Why do people commit suicide? And I can just tell you what I know from the research is that it's not usually one reason, it's usually a multitude of reasons, paired with negative coping strategies. Usually an event does happen a week or two prior that kind of cements that, but I also want you to know it's usually a multitude of reasons from what we know in the research. And sometimes you hear things on the news with kids and bullying, and that's the reason why they did that. I'm not saying that wasn't a factor, but I'm just saying that it's usually a multitude of reasons coupled with negative coping strategies, which is what we will talk about as well. And then just from doing lots of research over the years and going into schools and reading everything I can, journal articles, the thing that I want to share, the most profound thing I've read about suicide prevention is when they interview people who have attempted suicide, but they weren't successful. Overwhelmingly, they do report that they didn't even want to die. They just wanted their pain to end. So I also want you to keep that in mind. That, you know, that thing of, okay, you wanted to die, they just don't, they're not able to come up with another way to deal with the pain. And again, that's coping strategy as well. So they're just some of the things that I wanted to share with you, working with individuals on the prevention side as well. So, why is suicide prevention so important? I kind of put it in two different types of categories: children, which I call adolescents, and adults. I wasn't sure who is coming today. But suicide is the second leading cause of death for children and adolescents from the ages of 11 to 18. Again, when we got a call, it was a 7th grader who had committed suicide. That was unheard of in my mind. And what it is we're seeing is that it is on the rise. What we know is that 25%, so 1 in 4 teens, at some point in their adolescence, seriously consider suicidal acts. So they are walking around with this inner pain that is not being addressed. or it could be dressed. Sometimes it is. But it's absolutely overwhelming that, well, let me say this. Does that statistic surprise you?
1 in 4 teens contemplate suicide.
It's seriously considered, yes.
Where is that from?
Signs of suicide. It's the Friends for Life research. Again, it's also at the Center of Disease and CDC. And also from being in the schools, they participate in a youth annual Pennsylvania survey,
PACE, yeah.
the PACE survey. What scares me more than the drug and alcohol, me being drug and alcohol, is the mental health concern. So it's there. Now, when I go in to schools and I talk about this with teenagers, I say, are you surprised? They're like, no. Not. Why?
Because they're dealing with it.
They're dealing with it. And when teens are struggling, who are they likely to tell first?
Their friends.
Their friends. Okay, so that's why we go into the schools and we say to them, like, guess what? You are your friend's first line of defense. Like, we need you because we need you to help get them to the point where they can get the help that they need. Okay. So sometimes when I go into and I start off with that, parents are like, no, that's wrong. That can't be right. The kids aren't struggling. They are. Kids are struggling today. What are the reasons they're struggling? There's so many reasons. All I know is what they report and that they are struggling. The good thing about the teen population is that they give off warning signals that they are struggling. Whereas in the adult population, that's not necessarily the case. In working with teens, I have to tell you, when you talk about confidentiality and privacy, there's nothing. They don't know what that means. They just, and I like that because it's like, okay, I don't know if that will change as they get older, but I find that to be quite interesting. And we're going to talk about warning signs as well. Suicide is the 4th leading cause of death for adults age 18 and up in the United States as well. So again, we have adults that are struggling, we have teens that are struggling. What we do know is that depression is a strong risk factor for suicide. Just because you're depressed doesn't mean you're suicidal. And there are individuals that commit suicide that aren't depressed. They tend to be more on the impulsive side of behaviors, but there are definitely, depression is a risk factor. So I just want to talk a little bit about what are some warning signs that a person is struggling. The first is statements of despair. Now, again, if you have a teenager, I hate my life, if I didn't go to school, no one would recognize, wouldn't even notice I'm there. I want to kill myself. These are all things that people say. What I consider a warning sign is someone asking for help without saying the words, I need help. Does that make sense? Like, that's, to me, that's just really, really important. When someone says, I hate my life, or I don't care anymore, or if I didn't show up for school, nothing would matter, that's their way of saying they need help without saying those words. So if you have kids, you may want to look at their posts. You may want to look at their text messages. If you have adults in your life that are saying that, you may want to talk to them. And they post things on Facebook as well and all these social media as well. Another warning sign of someone who's struggling is all or nothing thinking. How many of you have college students that are going to be like they're applying? If I don't get in Penn State, my life is over. Okay? They can't see that there are so many other schools out there. If I don't make the lacrosse team, I'm done. Life is over. It's that all or nothing thinking, which is very dangerous because they don't realize that there are other colleges out there. There's other lacrosse organizations that you could go to, and maybe not the school. I swear everybody wants to be on the school team, but it doesn't always happen. That all or nothing thinking. If an adult, if I don't get this promotion, if my marriage ends, that black and white thinking is very dangerous. It's one-track thinking. I call it all or nothing thinking because when that happens, they don't feel like they have anything else left. So think about that. Think about our people in your life saying that. You know, this could be something that you can think about. And I'm always like, okay, if something happens, what are the alternatives? You know, I always say like, okay, if we can't make cookies today because the oven's broken, what are our alternatives? And try to get people to come up with 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 things, that brainstorming mentality. These are individuals that you really need to help brainstorm with them. But that all or nothing thinking is very dangerous. Moodiness and hopelessness. When people start to lose hope, that's really scary. And that's what people tend to miss, therapists included. You know, so when people start to lose hope, and moodiness, I don't know how many of you have teenagers, deal with teenagers, work with teenagers, they're moody. Yes, I live with, well, I have a 20-year-old, 16-year-old, but are they moody? Absolutely. But it's a little bit more than moodiness. You know, if you're seeing, I'd say a 2-week, if you're not seeing your teen come along in 2 weeks, you know, that might be a conversation that you need to have. Like, your mood up, you can be down. Sometimes individuals suffer from bipolar disorder. They're high, they're low. Personality disorders start to come out at the 18 to 20-year-old type of mentality. These are some things that you need to kind of think about. What we also do know is when individuals are depressed or thinking about suicide, drug and alcohol use increases, and that's often missed. I can't tell you how many college students that we see for underage drinking back at our agency who don't even consider alcohol a drug. Like, they don't know it's a drug, they don't understand that it's a depressant. You know, if you're drinking to escape, it's going to increase your anxiety, it's going to increase your depression. We have lots of teenagers, 18 to 25-year-olds who binge drink, who, I mean, again, really, really, really increases their mental health concerns, can cause depression, suicidal thinking, and behavior. Other warning signs that you may see from individuals who are struggling, starting to put their affairs in order. You know, we were involved in a case where a teenager was successful in ending her life, and during the process of the night before called several people to just say how wonderful a friend they thought they were. And the kids didn't realize that this was the goodbye, but when people start to put things in order, you know, call someone out of the blue, or, you know, maybe have a family member that they're not getting along with and try to, you know, mend fences. This is a way that sometimes individuals are thinking about ending their life, by kind of putting that out there, getting their affairs in order. They may give away possessions. You know, we were involved in a case where someone, a sister gave her room away to her little sister. Do teenagers give their room away? No, no, not at all. So these are some things that think about. You know, if you have a family member, an older adult, who starts giving away their possessions, you know, and I want you to have this jewelry, and they're giving away all their jewelry, they may be thinking about ending their life. And the also, what we know is fascination with death. When people start talking about things like, just questions like, where do I go when I die? Will you go to my funeral? Now, I know some people, my grandmother pre-planned her funeral, you know, and when the dress that she wanted to do, and she was terminal. So it's more than that, but they're talking about things, or a young person that's not sick, that fascination with death. Any other warning signs that maybe you have seen that you want to talk about? You can stop me at any point. Go ahead, Laura.
So I've met some individuals in this room, and I've always come out very honestly that I'm very open about talking about my experiences, and I have a brother that attempted suicide. And the biggest thing that we noticed with him was that he was sleeping nonstop. I mean, just absolutely, like, would come right home from school and go to sleep, wake up at like 3 or 4 in the morning, and then like kind of rustle around and then go to school and then come right to sleep. I will say, you know, he's doing a lot better now. He's got a full-time job. He's going to school. I mean, you know, he's really recovered, and it's amazing. And that recovery piece is definitely there. But yeah, that was the biggest thing that we, looking back on it,
Right.
kind of noticed that. Yeah.
A precursor to depression, absolutely, is definitely sleep, and
Yeah, please.
appetite, an increase in appetite or a decrease in appetite, and sleeping is usually is what can even spur on an episode of depression. So, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you getting the rest that you need?
Taking care of yourself.
Taking care of yourself. And we also see a slip in personal hygiene as well. We do see individuals that, to me, when I see people with drug and alcohol, and I think there's a depression issue, I can tell usually by their hygiene, by the second or third time I see them, that there's some type of slip as well.
I had a nephew that completed suicide, and the one thing, like 2 days before he did that, he seemed in like a euphoric state. He was visiting his friends and happy, and like you would have never thought at that moment that he had a plan.
Usually what happens is the indecisiveness. When someone is depressed or very low and they can't even think about suicide because they don't have the energy to do so, they start to come up a little bit, and that's when they make the decision to end their life, which is odd if you think about it on a curve. The euphoria he was feeling is because he made the decision and the finality of it. So yes, that is something that can occur with people when they look back. And again, you don't know this. I mean, you just think, oh, he's doing well, he's doing great, and you want him to win. Like, and I'm very sorry for your family. That's a hard thing. But yes, that is something that can happen.
They know how to get rid of the pain. It's about, they have a solution for the pain, the misery that they're in.
Yep, my sister's granddaughter was in a situation where her parents divorced. And so the daughter, her granddaughter, was in charge of taking care of her brother because the mother was working extra. So for 4 or 5 years, this girl who's now a teenager was taking care of her brother and her to make sure that they would get to school. Then they started not showing up at school, and then in Texas they were going to take the children away. And so the granddaughter tried to take her life. But there was a buildup, there was a divorce, and she just felt like she was not wanted or needed it, and the girl was exhausted. So
Yeah, she assumed the role of an adult.
she did. She did. She was not successful. She tried again.
She did.
Yeah, but then I had a friend who was in the Navy, and he really loved it. He just toured on a ship and learned how to do the welding. But then somehow he got hooked on drugs and drinking, and I saw him 2 weeks before he took his life. He loved people, he helped the church. The last time I saw him, he was real euphoric. And I said, he's like not all there. And then I did not know what happened until after the funeral. But there was that euphoria.
Yeah, it can happen. And again, teenagers give a lot of warning signals. Adults, not so much. Sometimes you can ask someone, you know, my next slide. You can ask someone. And when, I'll be honest, when we get a call at the office and someone will say, you know, my daughter's depressed, and I'll say, well, is she suicidal? And the mom's like, hold on, you're not gonna kill yourself, are you?
So the worst way to say it.
So I appreciate that the mom tried, but you need to ask the question. You need to ask it in not a framing way. You need to say, are you thinking about ending your life? Are you thinking about killing yourself? And you have to be quiet, and you have to wait for the response. Now, some adults will still deny it. Sometimes people will admit to it. Teenagers, we find, tend to say it more so. But you need to ask the question. And you have to be ready for the answer.
If someone has attempted, is it, a lot of people will say that they just did it for attention.
When it's multiple times.
You know what? I know. We always have to take it seriously. There's a difference between a suicide attempter and a suicide completer. The profile's different. If an individual is attempting to get attention, they need help. It may not be suicide prevention, but there's just something there that that person needs mental health counseling.
How do you know the difference?
Therapist, psychologist, psychiatrists. There are people who do multiple attempts and then complete too. So again,
Is there a statistic on that?
probably, I can't quote it to you for sure, but the completer tends to be male, Caucasian, middle-aged, not so much a teen, female. Is it a female or a male?
Male.
Okay, a male. Again, sometimes people use it as a form of manipulation. They do it because it works and they get the attention they need, and it's negative attention, but still attention. So again, the whole psychological, I would say that person needs a psychological evaluation. They need to be completely screened. But
So
something's
as
wrong.
the lay person, you don't know, so you've got to act as though it is, and it it is serious and that they mean it. You know, you have to, you don't try to guess it. You're the lay person, so you have to ask, and then you refer them.
And you can think it by yourself. You can be like, you know what, I don't know if this is for real, but you did what you had to do that was right. Like a mandated reporter. You know, when someone says something, it's not for me to figure out if it happened or not. It's just my job to call Childline, and they take it from there. Like, that's my role. And in a situation like this, if someone says that, you know what, I do what I have to do, and I'll let the psychiatrist and the psychologist figure it out. And as a mom of someone who's done it multiple times, you may know them, you may know, but again, I guess I would, safety would be absolutely, that person needs to develop a better coping strategy to get attention as well, if it's just attention-based. So.
But you do agree that it's more people that are impulsive, that have like impulsive
People
tendencies that
who
actually-
have impulsive tendencies tend to attempt suicide at a greater rate, absolutely. And if they're under the influence of drugs and alcohol, I would look at that as well, because that really does escalate the situation. You know, they could be having a substance abuse issue as well, or drug issue of some type, that needs to be addressed at the same time as well. I know I've been in schools and have talked about cutting, which I don't know if you know what that is, but that's a form of self-mutilation. Cutting is the most popular, but we do have kids that burn themselves, kids that hit themselves, things of that nature. What we don't tell our students is that self-mutilation, in a sense, is a way of trying to take the pain away without attempting suicide. It's a negative coping strategy. So what you're describing could be that person is engaging in self-cutting, not with suicide intent. It's just because it's their coping strategy. So it's just a fine line, and again, that would be diagnosable with a psychiatrist, but there are people that just cut because that's their coping strategy. So, but that's a good question.
Could you address anger issues in adults?
Sure.
Repressed anger issues, and they might have the post-traumatic stress of their father was in active combat in World War II with severe brutality in the Marines. I know a person, male, 64 years old, I've known for 18 years, a very close friend. And it sometimes you just feel like you've known this person, but you really don't know them deep inside. And there's just tremendous suppressed anger. And this past week, this person said to me, I'm a very angry man.
Well, I think when we talk about depression is a strong risk for suicide, depression isn't just crying and being sad. It's anger and irritability, and people don't realize that. Like, that's what depression, especially in older men. I know my dad loved him dearly. I don't know what it is. The men just get angrier as they get older.
And this person that I know, his father was in active combat in the Marines in World War II in Japan. And his father confessed to this man who's now 64. The father confessed that he killed 60 Japanese and he had to burn them. The father almost lost his head twice during combat. And so he grew up in an environment where the father slept with a rifle. And then the mother became, she was abusive to him because he could not perform sexually. I apologize. So I've known this person 18 years, and he said, Nadine, I'm a very angry man. And it's, it's something that, it's deep in the soul, and sometimes psychiatrists can help. But I don't know why I run into these people, but I told this person, he said, you're the only kind person I've ever known, but it's dragging me down very much. And my father had a situation like this too, came from abuse, so I'm drained. A lot of people are drained.
Well,
You mean you're drained?
I'm drained.
so
I'm drained.
my advice to you is you have to draw a line in the sand. Only you can decide what that line is and what your boundary is with that person. And when someone's anger, they lash out. That's what they do. That's how they deal with their.
That's the way my father dealt with it.
And again, people who lash out, they think that helps them, and it doesn't, because venting, when you come home, you say, oh, I had the worst day, and you talk about it for half an hour. That doesn't help you. It actually intensifies the situation.
Especially when you grow up with that exhaustion.
Makes it worse.
Or you're familiar with it.
So, but what I'm saying is for you, if you know you're exhausted by it, then you gotta put that line in the sand and step back. You give that person 5 minutes and be like, you know what, nice talking to you today. Or you don't make that phone call. Or you don't engage in the behavior that you know how it's going to end. So you can't change his behavior, but you can change how you
I've gone to
function.
all these supports. That's where I just came from. St. John's Lutheran Church has a support groups, and it has helped tremendously. But I'm 69 years old, and I'm just familiar with this pattern of male behavior.
Yeah.
Sounds like he's had a lot of trauma, and trauma has this.
His best friend, when he was 5 or 6 years old, threw a stone at him, and they were going to remove his eye, but he can only see peripherally out of his eye. And I understand, ladies and gentlemen, that when you have injury to an eye, it affects your whole perception of life. That the sight, when you have injury to your eye, it affects your perception of life, how you view things, on top of his father being in active combat. And I think there's a lot of hurting people I see, not only here in Phoenixville, I'm originally from Pittsburgh, there's a lot of hurting people, male and female, that are walking these streets. And I don't know why I seem to run into them. And they are usually males. I'm widowed. So I really have to prayerfully reevaluate just how what my role is. I pray all the time. I go to 8, 9, 10 different churches, do my Hail Marys and everything. But thank you. I think our churches, dear, need to educate. This is precious what Mark has facilitated here. We need to educate the churches and the schools and the communities and the libraries. Thank you. Thank you.
So when we're talking a little bit about suicide prevention and we talk about ask, do you want to end your life? I think it's really important to acknowledge, understand the perspective, and listen. I always do my example of a teenager who gets a 95 on a test. Okay? I could have one teenager who thinks that's the greatest thing. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. And one teenager who's like, oh my God, I'm so stupid. I can't believe this. The same event occurred, and there were two completely different reactions. Okay? That happens with suicide prevention. Everyone sees the world differently. Someone could be dating someone for 2 weeks, whether it's a teenager or a 50-year-old, a 70-year-old, and it could end. One person would be like, oh, it's fine. Other people could be devastated. Again, it's not for us to say, there's other fish in the sea, things of that nature, lecture. We have to meet people at their perspective. Only then can we understand the suicide prevention piece. Again, the same event can happen and people view the world differently. It's who we are, it's what makes us unique. People who deal the world on a more pessimistic side tend to have more depressive symptoms. Not their fault, that's just sort of how they are built and they're made. So when everyone says what they're sad or what they're frustrated or what they're angry about, just accept it. Just, you know what? If you're a parent, when my kids come through the door, Mom, I had the worst day, this happened. I'm like, you know what, that sucks. That's the first thing I say now, because instead of trying to fix it, which parents and I've done for years and I've learned the hard way, we really need to just understand their perspective. Because overwhelmingly, working with teens for 8 years, I always ask the teens, why do you tell your friends first? Why? I don't get it. I can sit here and talk about it all day long.
Because they feel they're closer to the issue at hand.
They share the same history, is definitely from what I hear. And the second was, they're not going to fix it. They're not going to judge me.
They're not going to try and fix it, right?
They're just going to say, that sucks too. And I was like, that's what, finally, someone said that in my class, and I was like, you know what, you're so right. So again, when we listen, we want to just tell these people, it could be a terminal illness, it could be nothing, it could be they didn't get a job, they didn't get that promotion they wanted, but to them, that was really important. So we have to meet someone where they're at. And
I'm guilty of being a fixer.
Me too.
Yeah, but you're in a position to do so.
Yeah, I just want to fix everybody and everything, and my kids will say, just if I say, well, what about this? Why don't you try this? Why don't you try it?
Yeah.
They're like, you get on, they really don't want me fixing it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what overwhelmingly, every time I go in and do suicide prevention, I start off with that question. And I get their true answers. And they don't want to be judged. They want that history. They want the same thing.
Yeah, my daughters will go to him, my teenagers. Mm-hmm. I have older ones too. Mm-hmm. But my teenagers will go to him because he doesn't fix it, he just listens.
Just listens, yeah. What we want to do is refer. If we know someone, again, I fell down, you didn't even know who I am, you're going to help me. We need to refer. We need to refer to services. Laura did a great job of what the respite is. I have other resources on the PowerPoints as well. First thing I want to say is 911. I can't tell you how many people do not think 911 is a resource when someone is suicidal. Had a situation at a school where a teen was posting online they were going to kill themselves. Mom found out about it, a friend of a mom found out about it and decided to email the guidance counselor Saturday at 2 p.m. Didn't think that guidance counselors don't check their messages, didn't think that this was important. Thank goodness the person was okay, but the parent didn't realize, call 911. So when I go in and I talk with teens, I'm always saying, you call 911. Your friend posts online 2 o'clock in the morning, your friends are out, oh, I'm gonna go over there, I'm gonna save them. No, call 911, okay? 911 is a resource. When you call 911 and when someone is suicidal, don't be surprised if you have a police department, the fire department, the ambulance comes out. I tell people this, because I don't want to scare them, but they're just resources and they don't know what they're going into. So again, 911 is something that we can call. Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This is for anyone who just wants to call and talk. I do have the Chester County Valley Crisis Center, which I did speak with. They will put you in contact with either if it's just something like you just want to talk, or if it's a crisis center. They have 2 separate lines, but you call in there, as well as the Montgomery County 24/7, which I brought as well, pamphlets as well.
Do you have to stay within the county?
They do want you to stay within the county, yes. Now you call 911, you're going to get the help that you need. If you're in Montgomery County but you're a Chester County resident, they'll work that out for you. But they will definitely help you. What is nice about these access services, I can speak on Montgomery County side because I live in Montgomery County, I live in Chester County, and I work in Montgomery County. That if you call and your person is not in crisis, but you just want to speak with them, they'll come to your house within 24 hours.
Wow.
Okay? And what's great about that is then you get a psychiatry appointment, if need be, within 48 hours. And I can't tell you what the wait time, Lauren. You know the wait time for a psychiatrist, adolescent psychologist could be 8 to 12 weeks. When parents are in crisis and it's not quite at the level of suicide, I will still encourage them to run through the emergency room because they will get the help that they need within 48 hours.
Is that just for up to age 18 or?
It depends. Now, 18 to 24, or I'm sorry, Pottstown has an adolescent unit and I believe has an adult unit as well. And they will get you a psychiatric within 2 days, I believe. So if you are also thinking about going to a hospital, I always suggest that you find out if they have a psychiatric unit as well. Just because that might be a little bit easier to transition as well. I did include a couple other resources. The Trevor Project is for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and questioning individuals. We do know with this particular population, they do have a higher suicide ideation. So this is specifically designed for individuals. And the online crisis chat, I Am Alive, because let's face it, our young people don't even call on the phone. And I call my kids, they say, why are you calling me? They say, it's texting. Because I pay for your phone. But an online crisis chat as well. And I know they actually added one in Berks County as well.
Are these all for kids?
These are, a suicide prevention line is national for adults as well. Chester County is for adults and kids. Montgomery County is for adult and kids. The LGBTQ is for, I believe, children and young adults. And the I Am Alive is, I believe, for anyone. I'm not a texter, so I haven't texted yet. I'll be honest, I'm a phone person when I refer out. So these are just some of the
There
resources.
is one more,
Go
speaking
ahead.
of texting, the national text line.
Yeah.
741-741, you
Mhm.
text that, and
Yes.
it's, it's been established and it's researched and
Mhm.
effective.
And again, that's, some people just, the kids, we do the I Am Alive, but yes, absolutely, absolutely.
What's that one? 741-741.
Yeah.
numbers that you texted?
Yeah, you text those numbers, and then, you can text a word like talk, or, they, you know, I've tried it before, it's been a while since I've tried it, you know, just to check the resource. And, but they'll come right on and start texting with you. So,
And they're trained, you know, facilitators,
yeah,
and
it's real
young
people,
people
it's
like
not
it.
real.
And young people tend to like that as well. So I will again make these available to you as well. Just the last few minutes, I want to talk about preventative factors. So a lot of times when we talk about suicide or there's an attempt, it's very reactive. It's, you know, you're in crisis, you try to get the person stabilized, and you're dealing with the aftermath. What we need to talk about are what are some protective factors, things that will help individuals be less at risk for suicide. So, speaking with kids for many, many years, and again, even adults that I see, I drug and alcohol, so I see a lot of DUIs at our agency. I always try to promote positive decision making. So I tell my adults and my young people, they have to make a choice. These are the three things that I always ask myself. Is it safe? Is it fair? And will it work? Again, with suicide prevention, we really want an individual to be safe. Okay, so we have to start thinking about being safe. When you have to make a decision, you know, if you're a kid and you're at a party and you want to try ecstasy, is it safe? Is it fair? Will it work? Try to bring up these type of thought processes for your kids, for adults as well. Is it safe? Try not to put yourself in harm's way. After a suicide 2 years ago, I was asked to come in and just be a crisis counselor at a school for the remainder of the year. So I got to see a lot of kids who were struggling with the fact that their friend had taken their life, her life. And in talking with a lot of the kids, overwhelmingly I realized, unfortunately, that our people, our teens, lacked a lot of positive coping strategies. I see that in my adults as well who have drinking issues. They have coping strategies, but they're negative. They drink. You know, they're on the internet all day long, they Netflix all day long, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but they don't have positive coping skills. If you have someone that you think is struggling, you know, try to get them to a knitting group. Try to get them to an exercise class. Try to get them to write in a journal. Try to get them to do something positive for themselves. So when I would see my kids, and I saw them, you know, on a weekly basis until the end of the year, I really tried to develop, because they didn't know what to do. They don't have coping skills, you know? And one of my kids wrote a sitcom, like just got into doing something like that because it had a creative spot. Now, again, it could be exercise, it could be physical for the individuals, the kids with all the sports, and they have performance anxiety from talking to them. I'm like, no, you're not doing anything else physical. You're going to do something. You're going to read for pleasure. You know, try to introduce coping skills for yourself, and model it for the people in your life that may be struggling. Yes.
Just a quick question. A lot of times the doctors prefer to put either adults or children on these medicines, and sometimes after they're on the medicines, they take their life. Some of the medicines are very reactive, counter-reactive.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to address it, but my concern is that concern.
Well, again, when an individual is put on medication, sometimes there is an increase that can happen. Usually when they're on medicine, they should be in therapy. So they should be talking. In talking, hopefully, they're trying to establish some positive coping skills to take away from some of the negative things, whether it's cutting, whether it's, you know, drinking, whether it's.
My concern, though, is the medical profession is trained to treat with medicines. And in the olden days, I'm 69 years old, so what, but anyway, in the olden days, I don't believe hearing of so many suicides. How did that era differ than now? I don't know if the doctors, none of us know, and it's a long debate, but my concern is they're so easy to medicate. Sometimes they need, I agree with exercise, the children are not, they're just technical. They, you know, they're not exercising, they're not physical to release all these
Yeah.
situations.
I see your point. I think
Possibly.
when you go to a medical doctor, they're trying to address it medically, and
Thank
they
you.
do it through with some type of medication. Not all medication has to be long-term. Like when someone is depressed, they can put them on something short-term and then hopefully get them off of it. Other people need to be on it because they have a long-term chronic illness. So I guess that's up to the doctor, but I understand your point. Yeah,
Oh,
sometimes.
thank you, it's so delicate, but it needs to
There's
be.
also so many different medications
Absolutely.
out there.
Absolutely.
They have to find the right one. So if one's not working for them, they need to
Right.
address that with their doctor
Absolutely.
to get
I
switched to a
agree.
different one that's gonna work.
I agree.
And I personally have that experience after my nephew committed suicide and I went through depression, and they had me on a medication that had me to a point where you could have gotten hit by a Mack truck in front of me and I would have been like, sucks for you. You know, I had no emotion. And I went to my doctor, I didn't like that feeling. And I told him I have absolutely no emotion. I could care less about anything. I don't even feel human at this point. And they switched me, and I have not stopped taking that medication. And I will not stop taking that medication. In my opinion, I think everyone in the world should be on medication. To be honest with you,
But
just because it has made that much of a difference in my life. And I'm on a very low dose. It's like a maintenance thing for me, but
For yours, it's maintenance.
but
And
I couldn't imagine, like, when I tried to stop taking it, I noticed little things, like road rage, just stupid little things, like I'm more agitated and things like that, so it just keeps me at a nice even
And
keel.
I think you brought up a really good point. With depression, the first medication, you usually don't hit it out of the park.
Right.
Usually, I think I read an article, it's like, sometimes you can try up to 3 within a year. It just takes a long time. When an individual goes on a medical leave from college, they give up to 2 years because in terms of mental health, it could take up to 2 years to find the right medications.
But
for someone to be
medications do,
successful.
right? I hear that a lot, that people think that the doctors are pushing the drugs, but sometimes you need that.
And I know people that are just on natural herbs, not to debate what you're saying, and they have really been helped with the natural herbs. St. John's wort in England, they've done that for 300 years. It just calms you. Passion flower at night to
Yeah, but
help rest your mind, but
There's
thank you.
different levels
Oh,
of,
absolutely.
you know, what, yeah.
Thank you.
But I think you both have a great point, but I think it's so great that we live in a society that there are
So many
alternatives.
different alternatives, right.
There are alternatives, and people can get help. It might take a while, like you said, and that's a hard process to go through. Because I've been involved in that as well, with people getting on the right meds and it taking a while, and sometimes going backwards before you go forward. But the good news is depression is treatable.
Yeah.
I mean, it has like an 80% success rate. That if you do your medication and with the therapy in conjunction, it has about an 80% rate of success. So that's something to keep in mind.
I just noticed, I think with younger people, it's harder to keep them in therapy though.
You know what? Because once they want immediate gratification and they're fine, they don't want to do it anymore. They don't see things in the long term. So people tend to seek therapy when they're depressed and they're going through something. And then right away, things get better and they're like, okay, I'm good now. And then they go off and then they go back into a dysfunctional relationship or something like that, and then that depression comes back again. But that is something that happens, that people, as soon as they're feeling okay, then they want it stopped because you're addressing the symptoms.
Yeah, it's like people with bipolar, they stop taking their medications.
Absolutely, absolutely, it can happen. So again, I think we came up with depression. It could be short-term, it could be situational, it could be a chronic. I mean, there are persistent depressive people that need help, maintenance, and we have to be able to provide that as well. Thank goodness we live in a society that we can. So the other thing that I also talk about is positive self-talk. I find that a lot of individuals who think about suicide, who are depressive, tend to really talk down to themselves. Positive self-talk is just really a good thing. So again, you can model it in your home. If you have a significant other that's struggling, you can say, you know what, I'm really nervous about this, but I got this. Like, kind of just keep saying things. Just, we model things, we knit, we do stuff, like our significant other may see us doing that, our kids may see us doing that. These are all positive things that we can do to help the other person in our situation, I think is really, really important. Safe home environment. If you have someone who's struggling with suicidal thoughts, behaviors, lock up your medications. Don't buy 100 count of Tylenol even though it's on sale. Lock up your prescription medications. If you're a gun owner, that's wonderful, but it needs to be locked up. Again, especially with impulsiveness, you have to be careful. What we do know is that guns are the most deadly form of suicide. I mean, again, most lethal. So if you have someone in your home that is struggling, I'd seriously consider that situation. And the other protective factor, overwhelmingly, what is something that is good is mentorship. Mentorship. Someone in your life, and again, it doesn't have to be a teen to a cool aunt. It could be an older person to another older person. Mentorship works. Okay? Mentor someone. Be a mentor to someone. Being part of a group. All of these things help. They help. So if you see someone struggling in your church group, you know, try to mentor them. Try to be helpful. Again, just having that relationship, and an informal relationship with someone that you can just check in with at work, at school. I always say with a teen that's struggling, I'm always like, I want a faculty mentor for this kid on SAP, because I want someone checking in with them, bring them brownies once a week, talk about the Eagles game, just something informal that works. They do it at college, they do it in the workplace. They say individuals come in, that's when they have most successful employees, when an older one mentors a younger employee. So again, if you have a family member that's struggling, get some kind of mentor for them. If they like motorcycles, go to the motorcycle club or something to help individuals. Those relationships, go ahead.
How serious are sleep issues in this situation? Sometimes a person their whole life could not rest well. Can you, and if you only have time, if you think it's important, how important are sleep issues to address them? Because sometimes could that bring on depression?
Absolutely, sleep can bring on depression. I would say if you truly have a sleep issue, I mean, there's sleep clinics in Norristown. I mean, you could have sleep apnea, you could have a diagnosable sleep disorder. I mean, they have it.
I have a friend who's never slept well their whole life, ever.
Wow.
Very Christian, but just has never ever slept well. So do you find that people that are in this situation, do they have severe sleep issues?
Sleep is something that usually goes, either sleep too much or not enough, as well as appetite, that triggers a depressive episode.
Thank you.
So I would suggest they start with a physician with sleep first. Because if it's a true sleep disorder, then that needs to be taken care of. Not to say it's not a co-occurring disorder, but it just seems like if they haven't slept their whole life, there's a sleep issue.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else that I haven't said? Any questions, concerns?
How do you get someone who's an adult, if you find that, they're an adult and you wanna, you think that they need to go forward with getting help, but they're an adult, so you can't make that, like, it's not your child, you
Right.
can't say, come on,
Okay, so
we're going to see a therapist. you know?
okay, so you're talking about someone who's struggling but's not suicidal. Because if they're truly suicidal, you can call 911, you can go through a procedure of mental health, or you can have them committed, the police are involved. There are procedures for that, so I guess that's you tell me which way you want the conversation
When
to
those
go.
procedures fail,
Yeah.
because they have,
Where you try to like,
because all that's been done.
okay,
So what it becomes down to with an adult, obviously, they're of their own recognizance, and they can check themselves out whenever they want.
True.
However, the problems persist. Can't force anybody to do anything, obviously.
Unless you have someone 302, but
But
they
that-
have to.
again, it's temporary.
They have to be,
Doesn't matter.
like, have a plan, is basically how you can have someone, or a police involvement,
well, let me ask you this, is this person drug or alcohol dependent?
since the depression.
Not dependent.
I don't know, it's hard to say.
I
Okay,
don't
so,
think dependent.
Use
use.
Yeah.
is
So,
involved.
and this is like an adult that's in their 20s,
30s.
30s. Are they dependent on you for
Everything.
Mhm.
financial stuff? So
It's gotten to that point.
it's got to that point. So I would take a step back and ask, excuse me, are you enabling this behavior at all?
Me, probably, because of my nephew.
Because you're
completely.
scared. Fear
Yeah,
is a
fear.
powerful motivator. I'm with you. I'm with you there.
So there seems to be a lot to be afraid of, and it's an aftermath. I remember calling for someone who was clearly, in my mind, suicidal. I'll put myself in my drawer if I ever die.
Right.
And then I was terrified. I'm like, oh, what if she gets mad? It's gonna be all kinds of stuff, fallout.
Yeah, if you push them, you don't wanna be the one to push them over the edge.
But I had to, but,
Yeah.
and, well, I mean, I had to say, get help, and they came to the house, and she
Yeah.
was happy. I was glad it worked out that way, but it doesn't always work out that way, I would think.
In this case, it's my son,
Okay.
he's the stepdad,
Okay.
so he has a totally different view than I do, and his is
Okay.
usually get up, get moving, do something with your life, blah, 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 and I'm more of the, he's sick, he needs help, you know, try to talk to him. You
Is it
know,
working?
things like that. Well, we have totally different viewpoints on,
Is your son working?
no, and he had a great job for a long time that he loved, and
So is he living with you in the home?
just, yeah, we had to have him move
Yeah,
in
so
because
things
his
are
life
just-
was just, it was falling apart. You know, it was after my mom passed, he was very close to,
So you would probably consider him depressed at this point?
beyond.
Yes.
He's on his,
Is
he already attempted 3 times.
Is he medicated?
No, because they kept misdiagnosed, well, he was misdiagnosed a couple of times. By the
Problem
same
is, he
doctor.
won't take the steps to go and start talking. You know, make the phone call. He has insurance, make the phone call. Find somebody at least to start talking to. Because in
Can
my
I
opinion.
just say that that's part of his illness?
Sure.
You know, like,
Yeah.
I do work
Thank
for
you.
the
In
Department
my-
of Mental Health,
yeah.
and that is
He's
part
so-
of his illness, and there is another class, you would benefit from, it's called Mental Health First Aid.
Mhm.
You took it.
I did, I took both.
And, it helps, parents, individuals, there's one for adults helping adults, I don't know how old he is, but there's one.
31.
Okay, so that would be the one you'd need. And there's one called Youth Mental Health First Aid, and it is for helping adolescents. And it is an 8-hour class. You're certified, like first aid. And they have them. They are provided free of charge in Phoenixville, usually through the Phoenixville Health Foundation helps with that.
I know they're doing it in Delco too.
Yeah, I would
Other
never
counties,
know
there's-
any of them.
Well, I would say
did
to do
call
it in this
crisis.
county because they're our.
Sure.
We're doing
Yeah.
them. But
Absolutely.
we're providing them, and so knowing what to say and how to respond, that's like,
Well,
that's
yeah,
huge.
because in
That's what I need.
in my biggest opinion, it's far easier for someone to talk to a stranger and accept what they have to say or not than coming from who they
A
think is the
parent.
enemy,
Right.
even though they do everything
Or,
for them.
or, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Because even she's the enemy, you would know she's the enabler.
Right.
Because she's the enabler, she's the enemy when he doesn't
He
get it.
doesn't wanna have to
So.
meet you.
Oh, that's the
Yeah.
problem.
No, yeah,
But he
that's
does.
part,
He's
yeah.
lived on his
We
own
get
since
that
he was
too.
18.
Right.
So getting to the point of being at 31 and he lost everything and now he's back home,
But-
it's like,
But you do have some
He doesn't
leverage
even want
now
to come.
that he's home, so you're going to say, you know, we're going to this class, and this is what, you wanna live here? We're
Well,
going.
that's
he did.
where-
I
that's
wouldn't
part
even
of it.
bring him to the class.
No,
Okay.
and that's
Okay.
because obviously, but that's the way that, okay, so honestly, myself, yes, I'm very stubborn, I'm hard-headed. However, you know, in the recent months, I don't know how many bookmarks of things I've been reading. I even told her what his actual problem is, and it's behavioral addiction. You know, that's part of it, you know, and she didn't know anything, what's that, you know?
Okay.
So,
yeah, but you're not the
the
doctor.
mindset of moving forward, that's why we're here too, also. You know, she said it to me yesterday, I registered, you know, is to start our process of how do we deal with it.
Right.
Because I can't deal with it, you know, I have to walk out of the house, I have to walk
But
away,
you're
or
here.
it gets worse.
Right.
So, not that I wanna ignore it,
Right.
but I can't directly deal with it, I don't know how. And in my opinion, she doesn't know how either, correctly or properly.
But you're here. I
Class.
give you
Yeah,
a
yeah.
lot of, you're here and you're
Yeah.
reading about it, and that's
That's
so
great.
positive. I mean, yeah, I mean.
That's great, and if this class could benefit in some way.
Well,
and-
it's our own coping skills. I mean, like you said earlier, they have no coping skills. And what I say is, he can't make a rational decision, you know, whereas I
Very
can.
well
And that's part of our coping skills or rational decisions on how to
Right.
approach the situation.
Right.
Because
But-
emotion gets in the way of everything.
I want to tell you from a point of view, and this is your home, so you do have some say in your home if he's going to be living with you. I'm not saying you can force anyone into treatment or anything like that, but you do have more power than you think you have.
But
And you're
when
letting,
he's tried that,
but you're letting fear
yeah,
motivate you.
but he's manipulative in that way because when he says, this is what you need to do if you wanna live in this house,
It's not the way you say
he
it.
hung himself.
Yeah, that's not, I mean, but the conversation can unfold differently.
Right.
If you know what, if you know. how
Right,
to-
and that's what we
Yeah,
need to
so like-
learn, because he's
Right.
very reactive, and I'm not saying a word because I don't wanna push him over the edge.
Because you're scared. Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. But again, if this class can help you in a way, and you can kind of maybe sit down with the
Yeah.
mediator even and say,
That's where I
these are
started
the
thinking, that's what I
expectations.
started reading, and I told her long ago, we need a mediator.
A
We need
mediator
somebody
might
who
be
knows how to
helpful.
talk through the situations.
Just to say, like, when you're living here, this is what we expect from you. And again, there's nothing wrong with, like, calling on the phone, and when I have a parent call, I'm like, as long as you can just put little Johnny, who's 28 on the phone with you, and we three-way call, because again, that's the illness, and he needs help. He doesn't wanna need help, but he needs help to get to that point, so, but then you're clear with the expectations that you have as well. Like a mediator, a counselor, a family counselor might even be a good thing for you at this point. And it's not just him, it's all of you. We're all in this situation. How are we gonna make this work to the best of our ability? You know what, we're open, you're open, we're open, let's all sit down type of thing. So, you know, it's just our issue. It's not his issue, it's our issue and how we're gonna make it work. And then you're gonna have to think about like what your line in the sand is and what your line in the sand is and
It seems to fluctuate every day, it's like one
well,
day.
it's fear.
Yeah.
You're living in constant
It's like
fear.
one day I'm like, I'm not doing nothing, I'm not, you know, I'm done, and then the next day I'm like, you know, what do you need, what can I
Right,
do for you, or,
right.
you know, because it's like, all right, now I see the sadness, and I want it to go,
Fix it.
yeah, I wanna fix it.
Fix it.
You know what you're going through is so common today. in every neighborhood,
Yeah.
in every town
Okay.
across this country, there are people living with family members who
Mhm.
are just sucking the life out of
Yeah.
them. And they don't mean to be.
Yeah.
It's their illness, but it is still sucking the life out of you, right? I mean, it's
Yeah.
just
Well, it's
so
definitely
hard.
genetic in my family. There's been more than one suicide in my family. It's quite a few, on both sides even. So, you know, it's now hitting my kids. And, you know, I have 4, thankfully. 2 of the 4 seem to be like, you know, ones I don't really have to worry about. But when you were saying about the grade, the 95 and how the difference is,
Oh, it's
I have a daughter who you
1
would,
year apart.
you kind of like scared me there because I'm like, oh my God, I think she is like everything I'd ever want to be in life. And then when you said that, she's that person that goes, oh my God, I got a 95. I'm stupid. Even though she's probably got the best GPA in the class. If it's not at 100. So now I'm like, oh my God, do I have to keep an eye on her too?
With your son, have you ever said the words, "How can I help you"?
Always. I do. Nobody else does. Everybody else wants him to do it himself. They tell me to stop.
But does he answer?
Yeah, it's usually leave me alone.
So
It's
he
always
hasn't.
negative. It's
Okay.
always mean. And he used to be the sweetest person in the world that was more of my protector. He was always there for me, and now he's completely opposite. Yeah, like, get the F out of my life. I can't stand you. But then I'm the one he will come to if he needs.
Again, remember,
Yeah.
depression is also anger and irritability. It's just
Mhm.
not the crying sadness it sounds like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there also a point where you have to let go? I mean, not let go of caring
Yeah.
for him, but like a friend of mine, her brother committed suicide in November, and one of the things she said to me, you know, we've been talking about it, was just like, I was calling him and I forgot to call him for a couple of days, and that's when he did it. So she felt bad. And
And she'll
I
live
say
with
to
that
her,
now.
you know, I don't think I mean, I've heard that, I've read it, because it comes in my family as well, and I just thought, like, you can't take that on, there's only so much any of us could do.
Yeah.
And
And you can tell yourself that a million times.
I know,
but
I know,
If it actually happens, like,
but, you
with
know.
my nephew, I wasn't there. I had a fire at my house, and I wasn't there when he needed me most, and that was what I couldn't deal with.
Our children will live or die without us.
Mhm.
It's hard.
That is a really, really hard, scary, terrifying concept. I would suggest you read The Beautiful Boy. It's on page 15. When he decides that, you know what, that was probably one of the most powerful things I read this month. I read The Beautiful Boy, and the fact that when you realize that no matter whether you called him or not called him,
Right.
It was gonna,
our children will live or die without us. And that's
And
a really
not every
scary
suicide can be prevented. Suicide is preventable. It is one of the most preventable kinds of death, but not everyone can be.
Well, I'm really surprised to hear about the 80% success rate for depression recovery or rehabilitation.
It's treatable. It's a
Uh-huh.
treatable illness.
It's
With-
so hard
most
to
of the
get
time,
them there.
It's the medication and the cognitive therapy that helps. So, with your son, I know you've probably been everywhere. I would start with a psychiatrist.
intensive, inpatient.
Okay. Is the follow-through the difficult part with your son?
Yeah, it
Okay.
doesn't follow through.
It's
That's-
the follow-through
that's-
part.
That's the biggest portion of it. Now, the biggest portion of it is that first step, you know, which will be, obviously, the problem is also that it's gonna be mandated because it's in a custody order. It's written.
Yeah, now it
He's
is,
supposed to go to a.
since
you
the
know,
last suicide
appointments in
attempt.
psychiatry and have a report every month. And, you know, that's gonna come to a head fast because that was written in November and it's now January.
So is that like a court order, or is that
Yeah,
something?
from, it was
another
between,
relationship?
no, it was court, yeah,
Yeah,
court
it
order
was the
between
mom.
the mother and him.
Okay.
After his last suicide
Right.
attempt, because they just had shared custody.
I
And
think-
they had equal amount of custody, but then after that, she decided to go for,
I think it's gonna come to a point where you're gonna have to, you know, as much as you love your son, there's only so much you can do. And you've done an awful lot, and it's all you can do.
I know, but so why I say it is, if my son's out in the ocean drowning, I'm not just gonna stand on the beach and go, you know, I tried to get there, but, you know, I got knocked over by the first wave, sorry. I just,
But your son's also standing in water and a lifeboat comes across and he's not doing it, and then
Yeah,
the water
that's
comes up
true,
here and a
yeah.
boat's coming by and he's like, no, I'm good, and then he drowns and he goes to heaven and they say, God's like, hey, did you get a hint? Like I sent you how many lifelines and you didn't respond. So I see both points of view
yeah, I
there.
do too.
But I just read The Beautiful Boy, because that really puts you in perspective that, you know what, they can live or die without us, and there's really nothing we can do. And now he's in your home, so every day you're going to be faced, you have a struggle every day. And of course you want to be a good mom. You want to fix the situation. You're going crazy knowing how to fix it. But
And we need a
Any
lot of
other
support when we make decisions like that. Would be hard. I would think we need
Yeah.
a lot of support to
Yeah.
make that happen.
I love the first aid thing, which I want to
Yeah,
get some info.
I
Yeah,
definitely
actually,
want-
yes, it's, so if
definitely
you go
want
to, I'm sorry to break cards.
He's writing it down.
If you go to the Chester County Department of Mental Health website, it's www.chesco.org/MHIDD, because it's actually a really long name for the department.
MHIDD.
Mental Health, Intellectual, and Developmental Disabilities, so it's that whole thing, so it's MHIDD. And on that page, there are, now I happen to know that right now there aren't any classes being offered in Phoenixville, but I'll tell you what, I had signed up to teach one, and there weren't enough people signed up, so they canceled the class. It was in Phoenixville at night.
Yeah, I remember that. I
Yeah,
signed
like
up for that.
50
Did you?
Yeah.
They canceled it. It was not that long ago, right?
And
Yeah,
where do they hold the classes?
It was at the Phoenixville Hospital, I think.
Okay.
I
But
would have
they-
never known if.
Yeah.
We scheduled it for
Well, that
April or
website's
something.
great for all kinds of resources like that. I mean,
Right.
we'll find stuff like that, support groups, I think, like,
Well,
and things
see,
like that.
things like that, I don't know if it would be beneficial to have those types of things, in places that, you know, the average person that doesn't know to go onto a website and look for something like
Well, we do.
a specific class, like,
We do market them, you know, we have been, and, but, you know, it's like mental health services, you don't really know about it until you need it, and then sometimes you're like in such a state by then, and you're so upset, and you're emotionally drained that it's just even harder to access
you
it.
know how, like, you'll go into a bathroom somewhere and on the back of the door is a sign about, you know, domestic violence.
Yeah.
And things like that, like, things like, you know.
There's more focus put on many other issues. other
Yeah,
than
like,
mental
if
health.
but you're saying it's the, second leading cause of death for teens? There's places they go, ice skating rinks, or, you know, things like that, like, there's sky jumps, like, yeah, like, things that kids like to do, even,
We are in the schools, actually.
Yeah.
We're training all the ninth graders, and we will be in Phoenixville High School with another suicide prevention training for all the ninth graders this month.
yeah.
Later this
They are
month.
getting it. They are getting it at the secondary level.
Yeah, I know that, yeah, for my kids being in school, I know they are getting it, I don't know if they, like, that program, my oldest daughter had started when my nephew completed suicide. A group of kids got together and put on the program, and then I didn't know if they actually followed it every year after that. I know they did for the first couple, but, I don't know that, like, there was never anything like that in the school prior to when my nephew had, committed suicide. He was a Phoenixville High School student. And he was 1 month out of graduation when he completed suicide. So you know, I don't know, I think they do things more now, but like for this class, like I would have never known.
I heard
call
about it
Valley-
somehow, I did hear about it.
Yeah.
Someone
There's
sent it to me,
newsletters and
I
things.
was interested because I had never heard, you know,
Yeah.
I like to learn as much as, again, I'm an instructor, but I learned a lot from you tonight. I took little bits, some of, yeah. You know, just little tips,
Yeah,
things that we don't
absolutely.
necessarily include.
And like I say, I think the more people that talk about it, the better it is. Like, you
Yeah,
know, like,
agreed.
think about our kids and our times tables, they, all the time, but I love, and I go to things too, because someone says it, it's a different way to look at it, and you're like,
Yeah.
wait, I mean, like, that's awesome, and it energizes you to, like, get the word out even more. So, but if you have concerns, like I said to Mark, we would love to come back, Springford Counseling in a couple months, and maybe do something else, or even put a first aid on here or something. Anything that we can do to help our community, we're in, we're nonprofit, we're
Yeah.
here, we're in it to win it, and we gotta make our community stronger,
Yeah.
so.
And
Just
even
talking
with the
about it
elderly
helps.
community, I've heard a lot of stories of, you know, people, senior citizens that.
Yes, elderly men, I think 86 years old, I
Yeah.
think
The highest
is the
demographic.
highest rate.
He's not 86 yet.
But I mean, and think about that's scary. I mean, it's something to think about. Like, and I can see elder prescription abuse is
Yeah, well, and
huge.
one thing that, you know, I was touched on, but, suicide has been on the rise steadily for the last decade.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of reasons for it. There are a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like you
Faster
said, layered anyway.
Yes.
It's individually layered and collectively, culturally layered, right? There are just a
Right.
lot of
Yeah.
stresses that we all have today.
Politically, everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's a lot of different things, but I think, you know, at least my generation and probably all of us at the table, we didn't learn about it in high school. They're starting to a little bit. They're having outside people come in and do a little class here and there. But they don't talk about it enough. And stigma still is the single most significant reason people don't get help.
Well, yeah, I think when we grew up, it was more like if someone needed any type of psychiatric care, it was like, ooh, stay away from that.
Yeah,
You're
right.
crazy.
I think you still have that to a certain
But
degree.
now,
You do,
kids-
I agree. I
You
think
do.
It's less.
People don't
People are
wanna,
more embarrassed to admit that they know somebody.
but the real young generation, the
Yeah.
kids that are learning this stuff in school about,
Yeah.
they're actually, I don't wanna say, they talk about it like it's a cool thing.
Oh,
Right.
my
Like-
therapist. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
no, I love it
got back
because
from my- and I'm, yeah,
they
I'm on
don't,
this
confidentiality
medication.
means nothing to them.
Yeah.
You have to keep confidentiality, they tell you everything. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, and I've
Dealing
heard
with it.
kids, you know,
So-
friends of my kids that are like, oh yeah, I was committed to blah, 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 and they put me on Seroquel and da-da-da-da. And it's like they talk about it like it's almost like,
A badge.
It's reality.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'm gonna stay for a few extra minutes if anyone wants to talk individually. I just wanna say thank you so much for having Springford Counseling come out. And again, my number's on there. I'll be in the office tomorrow from 9 to 12. If you wanna even just call, again,
You have the little newsletters?